Not too much to talk about today. We're gonna keep it short. I'm on vacation, so to speak. I'm upstate. I'm closing off some business up here, and you can see the lake in the background. Very beautiful sunset. Feel free to drop some stuff in the chat, by the way, if you guys are here. Drinking some Finger Lakes Riesling from Weiss Vineyard. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. But look, guys, it's October 15th, and perhaps this show is a little premature. And the reason maybe it's premature is because most of this stuff is going to be happening in the next 2 weeks and beyond. But I just wanted to touch in with you guys and give you an idea of what's about to happen, what the stakes are right now. Where this stuff's going, where it's going. Thank you, Rudy. Look, I expect next week the markets to not be looking very good because they're going to have the weekend, they're going to process a lot of the Q3 reports, and markets are going to open. I'm not expecting some very good news. And I think the week after, it's going to be even worse with the Evergrande stuff. Tension's rising, and I think what's important here is that people have to accept this understanding of the rising tensions. I mentioned this on Twitter the other day. Everyone's like, well, when is it going to happen? What's going to happen? When is it going to happen? Well, you need to have the tension get to a certain point before things happen. In the same way, guys, everyone who follows me for my dating stuff, in the same way that you don't just go on a date with a girl and you say, well, why haven't you slept with her yet? The tension has to get to a certain point before there can be an escalation. And so we're seeing this play out on the macro right now. And look, I'm not a financial advisor. Everybody can make their own financial decisions. But everybody on the inside saying the same stuff. Everybody who's looking at, hey, how can you possibly continue to maintain an economy where things are not being produced and things are not being shipped? You can't do it. At a certain point, it falls apart, and we're very, very close to that. So I don't want people to be fooled. Things are escalating. And you can see it right now. A lot of different countries have dropped their mandates today. And it looks like people in Italy, a lot of people are not going to work. A lot of people are not complying. We had the Southwest airline strike last week. You are going to expect a lot more of this. It's really going to get very intense. I'm going to tell you guys, speaking to a very, very good accountant. I mean, this is like a guy, the very, very cream of the crop. And he knows one of the reasons he's so good is because he's got contacts in the IRS. And, these are not your standard accountants who just kind of go and, fill out a form. Or even your above average accountant that knows, oh, you should look for this deduction. We're talking about the really, really good ones who know what the IRS is looking for, who know how to basically structure people's businesses and portfolios, etc., so that they're protected. And we were chatting the other day, and he was like, they are going after everybody everybody who has a business. Everybody who has a business. They're going to raid everybody's businesses in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's why they're hiring all these IRS agents. Because the whole intention of this agenda is to make sure that there's no independent wealth production available in the country. Right? Everything has to be dependent on corporations or the state. If you are a small business owner, a small family business in particular, and you transact with cash and you work within the family, whatever, they're going after you. They're getting rid of all that stuff because they can't control it. So this reset is going to occur. Now the question is what comes out of it. And really what I want to focus on, I think, for this brief COVID cabal is, what are you guys going to do? I'm not telling anybody what to do. But I see a lot of people who are like, well, I have to get it. I just don't know this situation. People have a lot of excuses. They have a lot of reasons. Well, you guys are welcome to make whatever reason you want. But driving's down over 10% from the last year and the year before, and accidents are up about 10 to 15%. Overall deaths are up 25%. Overall deaths are up 25% from the annual average. Remember last year they made a big deal out of everything? Last year, the deaths were flat. And in some places, actually a little bit of a dip. This year, they're up. They're up dramatically. 25% increase. People are wondering why some people just seem to be dropping dead. Okay, why are these planes crashing? Why are there's so many more bizarre freak car accidents? Things are coming to a head. And I have respect for the people who have managed over the last months to stay strong, but look, you play a good game and then you flinch on the 5-yard line. I mean, you can lose the game, right? I want people to keep perspective that we are talking about some very drastic things on the economic front, and we're talking about some very drastic things on the health front. I retweeted a story today about this woman who had dementia, who was basically killed in a hospital. This is not uncommon stuff at this point. I mean, I can't even tell you how many stories I've heard of this. I can't even tell you how many stories I've heard of people going to the hospital and getting killed, because the hospitals at this point, they don't know how to. It's almost as if the diagnosis prior to 2019 prior to like 2020 doesn't exist. Like, somebody's sick and somebody has some issue, maybe completely unrelated. If there's a COVID positive test, then that's all that they focus on. They ignore every other symptom. So it's going to get dire, guys. It's going to get dire. You can feel the tension building. The tension is, you could cut it with a knife. And I can tell you, I go around and ask people questions. I make little insinuations. And I'm hearing it all over. Everybody's fed up. Everybody's done with it. So I don't want to hear any more shit from people who are, oh my God, well, nothing's happening. No one's going to do anything. Nothing's. All right, well, that's what you think. That's what you think. If that is what you think, that's what you think. But I think these people are really just, what are they doing? What is their solution? What's their solution to things? Do they think that there's any hope? I think there's hope. I have faith in humanity. I have faith in people waking up. I mean, I see it. I see it happening all the time. Someone said on Twitter the other day, they talked about how during a slack tide, there's this weird movement with the water where everything just kind of stops all of a sudden. And it's not clear where one thing's going, where things are going one direction or another. And I feel that completely. We're in a slack tide. And I think that the tide changes end of the month. Changes end of the month. But I want to emphasize for you guys, you're going to have to strap in. Because do not think for a second that we have easy times ahead. You can prepare to your ass, right? You can prepare. You can do everything you possibly can. You will only get easier. Nothing is going to be easy for anybody here. We are really in for some tough times. And I don't want to sugarcoat anything. But the prize that we get at the end is the ability to rebuild this world. We'll be able to rebuild the world. We got to get through this. This is our opportunity to break out of the prison that we've been in for thousands and thousands of years. And the reality is that if humanity, for whatever reason, decides not to lean into courage, you know, you can think about, okay, well, what are we going to do when they win in like 3, 4, 5, 6, years? I think it's okay, fine, prepare for that. It's always better to be prepared, but what kind of life do you think you're going to be living? It's going to be like Terminator. It's going to be like Terminator. Except there may not be this sort of timeline shift where the Terminator, this entity comes back to try to change the course of history. I mean, you will be basically fighting this, I don't want to say pointless because life is never pointless, but if you want to have a good future, this is when you do it. This is when you stand up. Anybody who tells you that they're going to be going to Degen Island with these guys winning, or that they're going to be fine because they made the right steps, that they ride the tiger, total naivety of what they have planned. Absolute naivety. And I think a lot of those people, if they want those things, will be subsumed into the bug. They'll be subsumed into the hive mind. Because as an individual, you're not going to have any freedom whatsoever in the system. You won't have any freedom whatsoever in the system. The good news is they're not going to win with it, but you have to understand the stakes. Whenever you worry for a second, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should... Stop being a fucking bitch. It's my personal opinion. Stop being a fucking bitch. Seriously. Don't be a dumb fuck. Understand the stakes. Understand the stakes. The longer it takes you to draw a line, the harder things are. And now is the time when we have the collective mass consciousness on this level. And just wait for the economic stuff to come in. Wait for it. Some people were talking today, Q4 is going to be bad. I said from the beginning Q3, Q4, but I really do think that we are going to be getting some seriously bad economic data late this month. And I think what we get in January will be like catastrophic. But at that point, it's not even going to be really much of a surprise. We'll already be living it. And then we'll see the data that represents it. And then it will get really, really bad. That's what I think is going to happen. But we're going to be going through some very bad economic situations. So anyway, I don't really know what else to say. The only thing I can say is that Evergrande, okay, they default on their bonds on the 24th. What do you think China's going to do to shore up domestic support? Might be a pretty good time to make a move on Taiwan, right? And the question is the Biden administration going to give it to them? Well, you know that they will, but then you have these other questions, and I'm going to leave this stuff on hope, and then I'll go to the questions here in the comments before we close out. Did you guys know that Michael Flynn has a brother? Did you guys know Michael Flynn has a brother, Charles Flynn, who's actually a 3-star general, not a 2-star general? And Charles Flynn is in the Army, and he is in March of this year, he was appointed to commander of all land forces in Southeast Asia. Okay, to put that in perspective, that's a very prominent position, right? All land forces in Southeast Asia. So attack on Taiwan is Southeast Asia, right? I'm pretty sure that they're going to consider that Southeast Asia. So Charles Flynn, now this is Michael Flynn's brother. So if you think that the Biden administration had full control, do you think for a second that they would want Charles Flynn in that position? The answer, of course, is no, but they couldn't stop it. What else have they not been able to stop? Okay? There's been some very interesting stuff coming out about how the regime has talked about, how do I put this? The regime has basically said, all these mandates but when asked about to produce the mandate, it's only a press release. So you have to ask yourself at a certain point, what is real and what is just deception? What has actually been produced? And if they had all this power, why wouldn't they just produce it? Like, what is exactly going on right now? They seem to be playing this very delicate game because they do have to play a very delicate game. They have to get you to do things to yourself, to harm yourself, to try to protect them. But what are they trying to protect themselves from? Why do they care? Right? Catherine Herridge, I think she was, I might be pronouncing her last name wrong, but she was one of the reporters who, I think if you recall, she did some sort of thing for Trump, right? She was one of the people who grilled him at one of the debates, and she kind of sucked, but she has a reputation for being a pretty hard, tough journalist. Catherine Herridge did this big investigation as to why Gitmo continues to be built out. Gitmo is being built out with a big geriatric jail facility, right? Big geriatric facility, and Biden, all the Democrats in Congress, a lot of Republicans have all been trying to say, we don't want this built. But the military continues to build it. So why is that happening? Why are they continuing to build this out? I mention these things just so you understand that we are not alone. We're not alone. There is a cadre, but they need us. We need them, but they need us. They can't act without us. They'll get taken out without us. People are like, well, why don't they just act? Can you really be honest for a second about people? Let's be honest about people. You want to do the right thing? How many of you have tried to warn people, don't take the shit ball, and they took it anyway? And actually they mocked you for taking it. It's very difficult to help people who don't want to be helped. People who want to stay in the delusion. These people want to help the country, but they need the country behind them. You can't go and risk your neck to save people. You can set things up so you're in best position so when they're ready, but you can't do it before it happens. Okay, so they're there. They're there. They're waiting. They're waiting for us. They're waiting for us. How much pain do we have to suffer? But there is a certain point where if we don't act, it's not going to happen. We are at that precipice right now. We're at the precipice right now. I mentioned this in the last video. Things are happening. The ball's moving. Michael Sussman, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, was indicted by Durham, but only on one charge, which if you understand what that means, it means that he's cooperating. So who's he ratting out? What can we expect in the coming weeks? The Maricopa audit. We just did the recount. They haven't actually presented the multiple different ways, and I think there's like 9 or 10 different ways that any of these elements of fraud alone would be able to flip the election, and there's 9 or 10 different mechanisms. So we get into kinematic software, right? So we look at, are these ballots legitimate? Why were they printed on the wrong paper? These are all stuff that's coming, but they're all going to come at the same time. They're coming at the same time. So what can I say? You had your time to prepare. At this point, it's more just getting ready, mentally and emotionally, and enjoying the ride, so to speak, as much as you can. There's not a lot of time left to prepare anymore. I've been spending the last couple of weeks doing that, trying to get all my ducks in a row. You got maybe a week or two, if we're being generous here. If you don't have, get some extra supplies, get some extra food. But we're going to get through this. Just don't do anything stupid, guys. Don't do anything stupid. I'm going to look through some of these comments for a second. You guys want to ask some questions. But like I said, there's not much to say. We're on the precipice. I just wanted to touch base and tell you guys I love you and that we are going to get through this. And people are going to need you to remain calm, and they're going to need you to help explain what's going on as this stuff starts to break out into the open. because we're very, very close to this stuff breaking out into the open. We're so close to it. Let's see. Read an article about the coroners knowing the difference between shitballed and not shitballed because of the blood they are retrieving from the corpses. Yeah, I mean, the blood's black. You know, there's been people getting on dialysis machines, right? You're on a dialysis machine because you have some kidney issues, and, you know, you got the shitball. And this is a dialysis machine, by the way. They filter blood. That's what they're supposed to do. People are on the dialysis machine, and the dialysis machine is getting clogged up, broken down. They have to, like, clean it out because of what's in this blood. It is not pretty. It's really not pretty. Now, the good news is I don't think it's going to be as bad as some people claim. But if you're not prepared, for, like, a 10 to 15% die-off, then I would say that 10 to 15% is the average case scenario in the United States, 10 to 15% over the next 5 years, although I think we're going to see most of it by the time we get into spring. So, you know, it could be more. Could be, some people have said it's going to be a third of the country. I don't think that. Some people have said it's only going to be maybe a couple million. I think that would be great, but I'm not quite that optimistic. I think 10% is probably likely, which would be about 33 million, 30 million, something like that. Only fear I have is food supply. I have a small stockpile, but the unknown is how long it will be disrupted. What worries me? Any thoughts? Well, you're not going to starve. You're not going to starve, and I can tell you, you know, you have anybody who lived in Eastern Europe or lived under serious wartime communism kind of conditions. We have gone through worse on that front, and a lot of this stuff is just designed to put people in a state of fear because people in fear are more compliant. It's less going to be a reality, especially in the U.S. The U.S. has an enormous amount of food in it. It is the breadbasket of the world. Now, of course, that food has to be shipped, and there's all sorts of ways that you can destroy crops and you can block shipping, and that is all happening. But the point is, in a place like the U.S., you don't have to worry as much about that. Actually, China's got a lot more issues because China is not a breadbasket and is barely able to feed itself, really. And if they have bad weather, I mean, they're looking at anywhere from, because of the weather they've had, 1/3 to 2/3 of crops failing in the country, which is why another reason that you can expect some sort of war situation to present itself. And I didn't finish that thought, by the way, which was basically that I don't know how the military responds in this situation to China. That does this regime try to give them Taiwan, but is this a line for the military? I mean, Afghanistan was something that was difficult to stop them from tanking that. Is this a different situation when you have people on the ground like Charles Flynn? I don't know. Tonight's wine, I'll show the bottle. It's from Weiss Vineyards. It's a very nice Riesling. I had a bunch of them tonight with some friends. We went for a little tasting, and big fan of it. Big fan. We got a lot of white peach flavor. Yep. White peach, I think, is the perfect description for it. Tart peach. Some clients of mine in their 80s, aged 10 years and 6 weeks since I saw them last. Yeah, I've seen that as well. I've seen that with I won't personalize it, but I have seen people like that, and we don't know what's happened. We know what's happened, but it's just surreal to look at. And part of it is also that there's a grain of the features because there's blood's not getting to the face, right? Blood's not getting because there's all this microclotting. Anyway, it's very, very scary stuff. It's very scary stuff. Pray for them. But yeah, as I was saying with food, you don't have to worry about starving. You You may not have everything you want to eat. You may be a little hungry depending on where you're at in the West. I would recommend 2 to 4 weeks supply. If you've got more than that, that's great. It's mostly for your peace of mind. I don't see people dying of starvation unless they're really poor, isolated locations. That's where I would be worried. Like if you're in rural America and you don't have food on hand, if you're like elderly, kind of like what happened with the ice storm. And by the way, right, we might have some pretty crazy weather this winter too. They're already talking about heating prices up over 50% in America. Go figure, right? But is that going to accompany a very cold winter? It's possible. I mean, right now it's quite warm and lovely. The temperature doesn't change in the Northeast until Sunday, but we can have a very short fall. It's not uncommon these days to have like a sort of longer summer where you've got these 70s and high 60s and it just drops to the 40s. You lose the middle ground, which sucks. Let's see here. Is military as compromised as we're being led to believe? Military is definitely compromised. I mean, there's communist infiltration all throughout the military. And you have the situation where, there's been a lot of movements over the years to purge generals who were not compromised. But the flip side of this is that there are still good guys there, and you're not alone. You're not alone. A lot of these people, you're not allowed to come out publicly. So the best you ever get for the military to communicate to the public about how they feel about things is when you have a bunch of retired generals and admirals make a statement, which we've had in the U.S. and we've had in France, okay? Because they'll tell their friends who are retired, hey, can you make this on my behalf? Because if they make it, it's insubordination. They do that, they do it once. The next time something happens, it just happens. But I want to emphasize here, they're not going to pull this stuff off without you. They're not going to make a move unless the people are already in the streets and not complying. So I got to tell you, look, I appreciate if you want some reassurance, you're welcome to DM me. I'll send you what I can, but I'm going to tell you frankly, just stop being a fucking pussy. Just seriously stop being fucking pussies about this stuff. Oh, but you just don't understand. I can't, see this person, or, I can't, I'm going to lose this job. Stop being a fucking pussy. Like, get your head in perspective about what is going on. You have to understand what's going on. People are playing Russian roulette with their lives. Playing Russian roulette with their lives, and they're saying, like, well, here's why I had to do it. But they're playing Russian roulette, and they're getting their basic freedoms back temporarily. They're getting some of their basic freedoms back temporarily to play Russian roulette. It's not even like they're saying, look, you know what? Life kind of sucks. I'm going to play Russian roulette. If I win, I get $1 billion. You know what? Then I'll do something with my life. You know what? I don't agree with that, but I get it. At least there's something there. It's like, yeah, but, they're going to take away this already kind of, mediocre situation I had and make it a little bit worse if I don't play Russian roulette. Just stop playing this game. Stop playing the game. And I think part of the problem is that you don't realize how awful it is to have bad health until you have it. Go on COVID injuries on Telegram or shitball injuries on Telegram. Go on it. Go find the channel and go look at that and shut the fuck up. Because ask any of those people if they would have quit their job to not have to go through what they're going through. You are not thinking clearly. You're not thinking clearly if you think it's worth negotiating with this stuff. And that is your choice. You're welcome to make your choice. but you're not thinking clearly. And we're honestly, a lot of us are just really tired of this. I'm just, I'm afraid. What if just shut up. Shut up about it. Find people who align with you. You're not alone. You're just you're just complaining. Just complaining. Be a man. Step up to the plate. It's a war. It's a war. It's a war. If you understand it's a war and you're making excuses, you are telling me why you refuse to do your mission. Because you are afraid of this or that. My patience with this is limited. It's limited. I have enough on my plate. I carry enough as it is. If you don't think that I'm taking risks. I'll do myself any favors doing these shows. Good question here. Is it worth lying about being shitballed, or should I just stand by my decision, be real about where I'm at my decisions? Well, look, I don't judge people one way or another for this. But yeah, my personal perspective is you shouldn't try to fake it. Not only because it gives them a reason to go after you, but, eventually they'll figure that out if this continues. But because it's like seeing the frame. It's like thinking tactically. Like when I talk about stuff with dating, people ask, well, how do I get her to like me if I do this? Like, well, you're in her frame. You're trying to figure out what to do to get her to treat you in a certain way. Whereas you're not thinking about why you have to do that to begin with. So when you go and get a fake document, in many ways, and I don't think this is universally true, but for the vast majority of people, and the more people who do it, you are conceding the frame that it's okay to even have it. Whereas by just saying, like, you know what, I'm not going to go to any fucking place that makes me do this. I'm not going to play this game, right? That's how you shut it down. So I don't support it personally. I think that there are some exceptions where I understand it. But I don't think it's a flex. I think a flex is saying, I'm not going to play your fucking game. What are you going to do about it? That's a flex. Rather than saying, oh, I got this, because I knew this person. Well, good for you, but it's not a flex. You're recognizing their authority to dictate things, and you're trying to still be in their system. Who gives a fuck about that? So, appreciate you guys. We're nearly there. Slack Tide. Probably should have called this Slack Tide. Maybe I can change the name because it is Slack Tide. Anyway, I love you guys. We'll talk in the next 2 weeks for sure. I think by end of month we're definitely gonna have more to talk about. I'll see ya. Take care.